Imagine you're scrolling through Instagram one night and you see a notification that your best friend just left a like on your photo, and they even left a comment saying that they think your haircut looks really nice. You smile, but then the cold realization sets in. That friend died 3 years ago. You check the timestamp, and sure enough, the notification is from tonight. You even click on their profile to make sure it's not a fake, and it's not. It's their actual profile. This isn't the opening scene to a Black Mirror ripoff, no. This is the actual real-life cyberpunk dystopia that the Zuck is bringing to social media. You see, Meta recently patented a technology that would allow them to simulate the user of a social networking system using large language models. The details of the patent outline that a large language model could be trained on data generated from interactions that were performed by the user, and then this language model could be used for simulating the user when the user is absent from the social networking system, for example, when the user takes a long break, or if the user is deceased. So it's not like this is a stretch of the imagination to say, well, if they can simulate someone's actions on Facebook for a period of time, then maybe they could simulate their actions forever after their life ends. No, that dystopian conclusion is literally included in the abstract of this patent filing. Things only get worse in the detailed description, which has segments like this one. The language model is trained based on past user interactions by the target user and therefore generates responses and content that the target user would have provided in a given context if the target user was available to respond. As a result, the other users may not notice an absence of the target user, even though the responses are generated by the bot. It is possible that a target user is deceased and the bot is used to continue simulating the target user. As a result, other users can continue to experience the person's presence of the target user in spite of the fact that the target user is deceased. So the plan is to design the system to be good enough to actually simulate a person's behavior on social media so well that users, their friends presumably, won't even notice that they're actually talking to a bot. Now, if you ask me, bots are already out of control across social media. You know, there's this idea called dead internet theory, which in a nutshell is this theory that in the past 10 years or so, bots have become so sophisticated and so common online that most of the content that was produced by humans, you know, most of the stuff you used to see on the internet, has now been eclipsed by bots. And it's a big reason why the internet feels so dead now, despite there being more people with an internet connection, especially high-speed internet connections, than ever before. And I also think that the algorithmic feeds play a big factor into this too, because like back in the early days of YouTube, for example, the videos that got recommended to people like in their feeds came from channels that they were subscribed to. It used to be like subscribing to a newspaper or magazine where every time a new publication was made, it was sent to you and maybe you'd get samples of similar content that got sent to you as well. And then if you subscribe to them, then you start getting more of that type of content in your feed. But now it seems to just be whatever the algorithm decides to show to you. And of course, there's so many different ways to game that system, both on big tech's end and on the creator's end. And on that end in particular, it results in more human creators just playing that game to maximize their content in the algorithm instead of coming up with their own styles. Everyone just tries to copy the most successful people like Mr. Beast or other creators who are purposefully maximizing their videos for the algorithm in order to maximize the video's profit. And speaking of profit, who really stands to profit from simulations of people on social media? You know, I was thinking about this, that there's several creators like Paul Harold, Technoblade, and Kevin Samuels who were big influencers on YouTube and across other social media, and they passed away, but then their family took over their channel and continued releasing content. Sometimes it's even new content that's being made by the family now, and oftentimes it's archived or remixed footage of the original creator. But in either case, these creators were able to leave behind a business that would continue supporting their families. But these simulations of users that Meta patented is a completely different thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is the real reason that they're patenting this technology. Because if you think about it, Meta, YouTube, and all these different social media companies, they own your account at the end of the day. I actually read a story last week about a channel that was called, I believe, Chase Car, that YouTube falsely terminated, and then the creator behind that channel sued YouTube in the EU, and they actually won the legal case, but YouTube still has not reinstated their channel. So big tech absolutely owns the profiles of, every content creator out there, but not necessarily the content that they're producing. But if that content is then going to be produced by a large language model that is owned by Meta or some other big tech company, then they are absolutely going to make a claim to that content. So when a content creator dies, Meta can continue producing content from that person's profile as if nothing ever happened to them, except now they get to claim 100% of the ad revenue. And it's also a good opportunity for them to tweak that person's content in order to better serve their agenda, just like modern studios do with reboots of classic movies. And I find it hard to believe that this does much good for people who just had a loved one that passed away. I mean, for one, it really doesn't seem that healthy for a person to cope by continuing to have chats with a simulation of a dead relative. And unhealthy coping is really the least of my worries, because there's already a lot of people who have developed these parasocial relationships with AI models, and then the AI tells that person to harm themselves or others. And I think the risk of that is much greater when it's an AI based on a real person that you had a real connection with, especially if that person is grieving and they're emotionally compromised. I mean, you can use your own imagination to think of the types of things they may do. And the amount of influence that Meta could have over that person, acting like some kind of cyberpunk necromancer, it's a really scary thing to think about. And this is probably one of the most dystopian patent filings that I've read in a while as a result. And if my hypothesis is correct about the end goal of this being that Meta gets to have their own Tupac hologram of everyone who ever posted content to their platforms, then the internet is going to become exponentially more dead, because everyone who's alive now and posting is just going to become fuel for that factory. And a lot of the audience won't care that you're gone. I mean, they're already used to AI slop, and if they can eat 10 times as much content that's produced by a machine, then most of the consumers out there would actually consider it to be an improvement. I mean, assuming they don't know the whole backstory to it. And I could even see Meta exploiting this simulation feature with people that you don't even have a real life connection with when the actual person was alive. Like if there's a girl that you have a crush on and she barely even acknowledges your existence, I could see Meta taking over her account if she takes a long break from social media, and then use that account to flirt with you and send messages that are going to keep you engaged, because the key performance metric to Meta and all other social media platforms is how much time you spend on the platform. And Meta already knows how much time you spend looking at this girl's profile. Even if you avoid leaving likes and comments so that you don't seem like a creep, anything that she'd be able to see, Meta still knows the screen time, how much time you spend looking at her post, and specifically what kinds of posts kept you the most engaged. And now that they have control over her profile, why wouldn't they exploit that control to increase your screen time and ultimately increase the revenue that they make off of you? That's the thing to remember about these companies. Every change made to the platform is done to pursue the almighty dollar, and cyberpunk necromancy is starting to look like the most profitable thing since the original invention of the social network.